Welcome back to Systems of Scale. I'm Ian Gatsky. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Fluharty. Brandon is a former enterprise SaaS seller who closed over $50 million in deals, earned seven figures multiple years in a row, and then stepped away from corporate sales to help high performers design careers that lead to real autonomy. He's the creator of what he calls Autonomy Architecture and the MAP framework, which is all about turning performance into leverage and leverage into long-term freedom. In our conversation, we cover what it actually means to engineer autonomy in your life, why status traps and lifestyle inflation quietly steal your freedom, how to think about your career in stages, learn, earn, and evolve, and why execution is the real difference maker once the idea that you have is good enough. If you're new here and you get value from this conversation, hit subscribe and share it with a friend. And now here is my conversation with Brandon Fluharty. Brandon, thank you so much for being here.
Ian, thanks for having me.
One idea that shows up in your work is that autonomy is not something that you stumble into or earn later. It's something that you have to intentionally design for throughout your life. I would love for you to unpack that idea a little bit more. So when you say autonomy is an engineered outcome, what do you actually mean by that? And how is that different from the way most high performers think about freedom or success?
I had to learn this the hard way, but now I call it autonomy architecture. There was always something that was sort of my driving force throughout my sales career, which was as I was attaining success, there were definitely traps along with that, but also like the traps of success, which was always being asked to be promoted. And I didn't know why I was turning down promotions to be a manager or a leader or even climb the ranks into higher level executive positions. But I think intuitively, I just prized my own autonomy, and hence why I stayed in a individual contributor role. So one, I could see my managers, how stressed they were. They weren't actually coaching us. They were just managing dashboards and constantly being pressured from the top down. It was a quick rotation. So I think at the time in my corporate career, it was like the tenure of a VP of sales was like 18 months. I think it's now shrunk down to 14 months and continues to decline. It was a hot seat I just didn't want to be in. That's one component. And then two, I had to unlearn a lot of the rules that society presses on us throughout our early years, our formative years, which is constantly chasing things like status symbols. And luckily, I was in sales, and that gives you a really unique advantage compared to other corporate roles where you're in charge of your income. But when I was growing up, nobody taught me how to necessarily manage money well. And so there can be the trap of once you make money, you want to spend it. And you want to spend it because society teaches you to chase after the flashy status symbols. And so it's constantly thrown at you to constantly upgrade your lifestyle. And so I sort of had to learn the hard way through a bankruptcy to not chase those shiny objects and the status symbols, the fancy cars, the big house on the block, and truly take what I was earning and sort of invest that into my own freedom. So I would say there was like a duality that you have to sort of unlearn society's rules, and then also literally not wanting to trap myself through the success that comes with promotions. And throughout my career, I was deliberate about designing that each step of the way.
There's a great quote from Naval related to status games. You just don't play them, right? Just don't play status games. He says it in a way that lands more eloquently than I just said it. But what you're saying reminds me a lot of that. Is just playing status games is a ugly business, and it leads to a very hollow life. But when you're teaching others, you called it autonomy architecture.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. That's a great name. So when you're teaching others how to live that lifestyle or architect their autonomy, what are the components of that? Is it something that you kind of think through, you write out like, okay, this is what autonomy looks like for you? And if so, what are the components of that autonomy architecture?
I think it first comes down to creating your map. And literally map means something to me and those that I work with. So The first thing is M, mindset. And part of autonomy is a little bit of what I was talking about earlier, which is sort of starting to think independently and thinking for yourself, thinking critically, thinking strategically, thinking purposefully, intentionally, all that, because we come into, especially by the time we enter the workforce, so much is pressed upon us from our culture, our family dynamics, our background, schooling, and so forth. So by the time we get to a very independent age where we've got to take care of ourselves, we're inherently operating by the rules written by others. So the first place to really start and map out your journey towards authentic autonomy architecture is creating your map, and it starts with your mindset. That's really important. And then as we layer down to abilities, so how do you increase your abilities? And so that could be actual skills that you apply in your role that help you to create asymmetric returns. And, that's pretty cool, right? Because most of us, most listening, are not participating in the labor economy where it's a one-to-one trade of time for effort to earn an income, like working in a factory or maybe a hairstylist, a barber, whatever the case may be, where we are trading our knowledge, right? Most of us are knowledge workers, and we're actually in the midst of a new economic shift, which is when you layer in AI, instead of like a 1 to 3 or 1 to 5x leverage that we had as a knowledge worker, we're moving now to like 1 to 10x or 1 to 100x, where you could literally build anything with AI, right? That's very capable and not have any technical expertise and create products, create websites, create new ways to create economic freedom for yourself. So those abilities, we have to be intentional about thinking about and harnessing those skills and leveraging those skills that are interesting to us, that are appropriate to us, and also take advantage of our unique capabilities and assets that we come into the world with. It starts with mindset, and then it moves to, intentionally harnessing your abilities and improving your abilities and stacking up those skills and capabilities so that you can, again, further create the third component, which is progress. Progress, I look at it in a multidimensional way. So the way I work with my clients is we think about, instead of work as a career, right, where you're trading time for dollars in perpetuity, or at least until the average retirement age, that world is long gone in our rearview mirror. And where we have the ability, especially today in 2026, where you can create that 1 to 100x leverage using things like AI, I think of we're playing a game, and that allows us to sort of treat our calendars as less of a source of stress. What do I have to do? Who do I have to do it with? Where do I have to do it? To transforming that to more of a game console. And so the way I think about playing this game is across 3 main levels, and level 1 being the learn phase. And that's where, you typically start in the workforce. You don't know what you don't know. And what you're trying to do is apply effort to gain skills. Mm-hmm. And at that level, your calendar is going to be primarily owned by other people. 80% others are going to be putting things on your calendar, telling you how to onboard, telling you what meetings to be in, what skills to develop, go get clients, or whatever the case may be. To eventually, you want to fine tune your map so that you get into level 2, which I call the earn phase, particularly for the type of people I work with, those in sales, where you're in control of your income more than other corporate roles. This is a great phase to be in because you can create those asymmetric returns with your income. And so now it's about applying those abilities into skills to create and build leverage for yourself. And then if you play the game smart, you're not inflating your lifestyle, then you can progress to level 3, which I call the evolve stage. And I consider myself maybe 4 years into the evolve stage. And the way I think about how you make progress in these 3 levels, the first component is calendar ownership. How much of your calendar do you own? Like I said, at the start of your career, maybe 100% of it is owned by somebody else. And at level 3, the evolve stage, you own 100% of it. So you're free to pursue your passion projects. You're free to choose clients that you work with. It's up to you how you fill up that calendar. Then the second component is like a financial runway, right? That allows you to move across those levels. Let's say you do move into level 3 where you have 100% ownership of your calendar. You don't necessarily want to feel stressed that what you do has to make money so that you pay the bills, you can pay the mortgage, you can, fund the college fund for the kids or whatever the case may be. I like to think of it, again, more like play instead of work. So if you can get to that stage, it's good to treat your work more like art. And you're doing things at a really high quality standard, but you're choosing, again, how to work at the pace that you work and so forth. So that's another important component that we walk through with our clients is owning your calendar, the financial runway that allows you to operate in that autonomous state. The other component is optionality. How many options do you have to produce income, to, say yes or no to certain clients or projects? Level 1, you might have to be contained to a certain geography, a certain city, a certain neighborhood, because your employer's mandating that you've got to be in the office 5 days a week. To level 3 being, I could live and work anywhere in the world, right? I could be a nomad if I wanted to be. And then the fourth component is just time it takes to move through those 3 levels. And hopefully you're getting to the evolve stage, not at 65, 67, or even 55. You're getting to that place where you 100% own your calendar. You have a financial runway where money is not a burden. It frees you up to have options in level 3. And you're truly at that point somebody who has authentic autonomy. You've architected that authentic autonomy. That's sort of the framework that we map to get our clients to that level 3 in the right timeline that is appropriate for them.
Well said. So much of what you said rhymes with Naval. I think he might define that third stage of evolve, and I think maybe others might hear this too, where most people might consider that retirement, wherever they have 100% ownership of their calendar, they can kind of decide. And the way Naval defines retirement is when you stop sacrificing today for some arbitrary future tomorrow. And I think that's how you would live each day in that evolve stage. Is it possible, do you think, to reach that evolve stage through like a corporate job? Or do you kind of have to go out and do something on your own, like kind of create something? Or is that something that you've coached people through getting to that evolved stage and living in that evolved stage in a corporate position? Or maybe can you use a corporate job as a vehicle to get you to that stage, and then once you're in that stage, you just can't be working in a corporate job? Or is that something that's possible?
Fabulous questions. And the way I've experienced it is, and why I'm such an advocate on, say, LinkedIn, talking about why sales, for instance, is the best corporate vehicle for accelerating that path to that level 3 evolve stage, is because you're a mini entrepreneur, or you're an entrepreneur in heart. And maybe that's why you haven't started your own startup or business out of the gates, and you've maybe happened into sales. A lot of the same dynamics, right? You get a lot of rejection often. You do have to be very independent and, be innovative to go figure out, well, how do I pay my bills, right? Through commissions? How do I start creating optionality for myself through winning business this quarter and investing in my future, taking care of my family? I kind of look at it as like entrepreneurship and training
Hmm.
for sellers, and you can make insane amount of money in that corporate role, that level 2 earn stage. As I discovered for myself, right? No college degree, especially in the last 4 years of my corporate role, I didn't really know anything about the specific industry that we were operating in. And I was
Wow.
able to earn 7 figures multiple years in a row. And by not inflating my lifestyle, that gave me the ability to walk away and go pursue the stuff that was circling around in my heart and ideas I had percolating in my mind of, yeah, I do want to do my own thing. And I've always thought that way. And that's why I probably was a good seller. To answer your question, specifically, I do think there comes a stage where, yes, you can carve an insane amount of autonomy for yourself in the corporate world, especially again, if you're a high performer in sales. But there's going to be a few things that you'll come up against where the only natural next stage is that level 3 evolve stage, because there's one thing, right? Especially if you start earning incredible income, like I'm talking 500, $1 million a year, you'll have a conversation with your accountant where it's just like, wait a minute, if you're this good working for somebody else, imagine what you could do on your own, because you will have a tax burden, right? And I live in no income state taxes. I split my time between Florida and Nashville. And when I first earned 7 figures W-2, I was beyond the automatic tax deductions in my payroll. I had to pay like the equivalent of a CEO's salary in additional taxes. It just goes to show you that, the tax code does not favor corporate workers. You get to a certain stage where there are literal benefits to be an entrepreneur, even if you're just a solo LLC, that you can start to take deductions that are available to you because you run a business. So that's one thing you'll come up against and discover. You may own more of your calendar, but the thing is, somebody still owns it, whether it's Outlook or Google. Your employer is still paying for that service. You don't own your calendar. You still have to show up at some point throughout the year, right? No matter how good your performance is, you're going to have to show up on a meeting that you don't necessarily want to be on, or you're going to have to interface with clients that you're not wholly choosing for yourself, or you get Slack notifications or emails that you don't want to necessarily deal with. And I'm not saying those things don't happen when you own your own business, but the difference is choice. And in level 3, you're giving yourself the choice, and then you can fine tune that choice until it gets more and more optimal to the work fits in around the life that you've designed for yourself. And again, some of that can happen in level 2, but it's hard to do it completely and 100% on your terms when you're in a corporate role. Those two dynamics alone, right? The tax burden and not owning your calendar truly 100%, those would be the two areas that I talk about with my clients that, yeah, you can have a lot of autonomy, but the level of autonomy and optionality that you can create on your own is amplified when you're running the show.
And that's the standard, right? If you qualify, you've reached the evolved stage once you have 100% ownership. It's just impossible kind of by nature in any kind of corporate role. But yeah, the more you learn about the tax code, the more you realize that this whole system was designed for people who own real estate and people who own their own businesses, right? Which I do think is the optimal way, because I think the people who own real estate are going to be improving, developing, building new real estate, right? We want to optimize for that. And then also the people who own their own businesses are the people that are out there solving problems, creating jobs. Like those are the people that you want to support and optimize for. You talked about salespeople as being entrepreneurs in training. I couldn't agree with that more. Every entrepreneurship book, business book, anything that you read will emphasize the fact that the skill of sales is the most important skill that you could develop, period,
Yeah.
in life in general. But also, if you're trying to build a business, like I have not learned anything. Like I went to school for 4 years, studied marketing, business school, but I had a job summer of my junior year of college where all I did all day was cold call. I learned more in those 3 months than I did in my entire 4 years of school or 18 years of school, whatever.
Absolutely.
Hands
Yep.
down. So yeah, I think that's a really good point that you made there, that all salespeople are just entrepreneurs in training, because you're learning the most valuable skills that are required to go out and do something on your own. Problem solving, thinking on your feet, right? Sales, obviously, handling rejection, failing, getting back up, going after it again, 100%, like that autonomy that you talked about. And then your goal with MAP and this whole roadmap and this framework that you've created is to give people a sort of replacement, right? Because the traditional roadmap that society has put on everybody has been to go to school, get a job, work your way up the corporate ladder, retire at 65, and then that tail end of your career, you're going to be moving up into that VP role, right? Where the churn is 12 months, 14 months, which is insane, right? Like you're going to move your way up the status ladder, but as you move your way up the status ladder, you also add on way more stress, responsibility. You lose more and more and more of that calendar. You're also separating yourself from the thing that you actually probably love doing, which is selling, right? Those VPs don't actually really do any selling. They just do a lot of managing of people.
Exactly.
So your goal with this MAP framework is to kind of give people an alternative to that traditional roadmap that society has provided people. Your MAP framework as a potential roadmap versus this traditional roadmap that most people are on, I think you can kind of confidently say like, hey, there's a better way. You can do something like this.
Absolutely. You nailed it perfectly. And I would add another segment that has emerged very quickly and become very popular over the past decade, and especially now, which is those who are maybe going straight into building their own thing. And I'm a big supporter of that. But I think there's a lot of like social influencers who are maybe flexing. Again, they're creating rules, right, that are impressionable on young people who maybe, again, have that entrepreneurial drive and spirit in them. And then they think, I can go get my own Lambo through crypto investing, right? Or trading, right? And
wholesaling, whatever it is.
Super bullish on Bitcoin, by the way, because that's just where our economy is going. It's being tokenized and digitized. So it's nothing against the underlying valuable assets like Bitcoin and the rails being built on top of Ethereum. But the idea of being influenced by those who are flexing status symbols as a way of like, I could go be my own boss, and all I need is a smartphone camera and a TikTok, and I can earn a lot of money. Again, those are people who are absorbing rules that are written by other people. This smaller segment would be, well, actually purposefully going into sales and actually getting a paid MBA, right, through sales is actually a good bet, because now you're taking the burden off of solopreneurship and entrepreneurship and putting that on an employer where they're paying your health benefits, maybe even investments into a 401k, giving you even a base salary, and giving you the opportunity to develop, again, the core skill set. Mark Cuban says all the time, if I had to start all over, could I become a millionaire all over again? He's obviously a billionaire, but he says this often, could I just make $1 million? Yes, absolutely. The first thing I would do is get a bartender job, at night, and a sales job in the day. Everybody has to sell, whether you're a student, you're a parent, you're an attorney, a doctor, you have to sell something. And so you might as well master the number one skill that provides optionality and autonomy. Why not go do that? And then you can still learn from other influencers who talk about investing in real estate or digital assets like Bitcoin, or in the stock market, or building your business on social media and creating a content empire. That takes time. And so you're best suited to sort of supplement that with a sales job. So all that to say, yes, the traditional corporate path, that's typically who I work with. But there's a new subset of folks who are thinking they can be the next big thing, and it doesn't take much effort. It just takes a little bit of vanity metrics and growing on social media, and they can start earning 500K, $1 million a year. And that's a fallacy, unfortunately, that a lot of people are learning the hard way.
100%. Yeah, there is no way around the hard work, right? There's no way around, there's no skip button to skipping the pain and the work that is required to build that life for yourself. When I graduated from college, I had two paths, right? The path that I was 90%, that was the plan, is exactly what you teach, right? I was going to get a sales job, either in tech sales, medical device sales, some sales job, right? I was interviewing for a bunch of these different places. And then 2 months before I graduated from college, one of my buddies back home started a business. And I was like, dude, like we were talking about back and forth, and we're like, hey, what if I just kind of came back up there? But I didn't go into that with the expectation that, oh, we're going to get rich in a year, 2 years. Like both my parents had started their own small businesses, right? They've had failures in the past. Like I understood how challenging, and also like I know all the stats, right? 90% of startups fail within the first year, whatever it is.
You had the right mindset, right? You had the first component of the map, right? Right.
Yes. Exactly.
You were privy to that, luckily. Yeah.
Yeah. And I went into it. The reason that I made the decision to ultimately not go for that sales role and go start this business with my friend from back home was, in that moment, like I understood how risky it was and how unlikely it was to work out. Like no matter how much we were going to put into it, right? I understood how much work it was going to take. But the reason I did it at that point was because I knew how risky it was. Like, okay, I'm 22 years old. You know, I can go live in my parents' basement, and I graduated a semester early. My whole decision that I made with myself was like, okay, I'm going to take what would have been my last semester of college, push as hard as I can on this, and we'll reevaluate in like June or July, figure out like, okay, if this is not working, I'm just going to go back. Those sales jobs will always be there, right? Like maybe not the exact role, but like there's some sales role out there that I could go get. I went back, and, you know, luckily it worked out for me, right? We got really lucky with the clients that we had, people that we worked with, like just things had to work out, and luckily it did. And I do kind of encourage other people to do that, because like when you're young, I had no responsibility. It was literally myself. Like I needed nothing. I was able to go live in my parents' basement. That first year in business, I think in total we paid ourselves like maybe $5,000 each, right? So like I was able to make no money, right? My mom was still buying groceries, things like that. So I was in a very fortunate situation to have that kind of setup. And that's not the same thing for everybody. Like other people don't have that kind of system available to them. So I was really fortunate for that. But yeah, going into it with the idea of starting your own business, that, oh, all I need to do is, you know, create some TikTok videos and trade Bitcoin and day trade and wholesale or whatever. It's just like, it literally is just a scam. Like none of that is going to work. It's you're
just making the course creator, content creator rich, right? You're not making yourself rich.
Exactly. Like the fundamental business principles of like what it takes to be successful in any business are never going to change, right? Like you have to provide a meaningfully valuable service to people and solve problems and do it for a lot of people and do a great job, right? Like and that takes a lot of work. I brought up the fact that a lot of your work reminds me of Shahil Bloom, his book, The 5 Types of Wealth. Like similarly to how your roadmap provides people an alternative to how they can kind of approach their career path or their goals for life. He argues in a very similar fashion in that book that society places way too much emphasis on only financial wealth as the only type of wealth that you can build, or the only wealth that matters. And he argues that, hey, we should have a different scoreboard for life that has 5 different types of wealth, right? Social wealth, time wealth, health wealth, financial wealth. In that book, and I'm curious how you approach this with your clients, he talks about how most of us are just always on the never-ending hamster wheel of more money, because we never slow down to think about how much enough for us is financially. You have your definition of enough financially for the rest of your life. Now, this is something that updates as your lifestyle expands, something that you should maybe do every few years. Like define what enough for you financially looks like. And I'm curious, so I assume like when people are working through your roadmap, right? Obviously everything starts with mindset, getting into who they are truly, like what are their beliefs, what are their desires, what are their goals that they have for themselves, not what other people have put on them. But is there a moment in that phase where you have people kind of sit down and think through like, okay, what is that autonomous lifestyle look like for you? And then kind of what's the financing that is required to live that? Is that a part of that program for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So hard to go into everything, every nuance and detail in a 45-minute podcast, but where MAP gives us a starting ground as sort of a roadmap to use, within that, to measure our progress against those sort of 4 criteria, I have my clients develop their mission, their vision, and their purpose. And purpose is then further broken out to having a personal philosophy, principles, defining your priorities, and then turning your priorities into projects, right? So that then you can systematically use the finite resources we all deal with: time, energy, attention, and money. And then turn all of that, your map, your MVP, your mission, vision, and progress, and team, right? It all kind of becomes a map for your MVP team as your operating system. And then we add an S to that at the end. There's a scorecard, there's a scoreboard for you personally, because everybody should have a different scoreboard. Let's say somebody listening is in their 20s and, like you, maybe went straight into entrepreneurship and building a business because the timing was right. And again, they knew the risk that they were getting into. And like you, I call that being a purposeful performer. You were purposeful about getting into the business, knowing you were young enough that if it didn't work out well, the tech sales job or the health medical sales job was always there, right? That was always an option, but you chose purposely going into building this business. So we create this operating system to help you more clearly work through the 3 levels, and then money being a portion of that. And so absolutely, I write about this. Defining your enough is really important. So when I left the corporate world, the traditional advice is get 25 years of your total net worth compiled so that you could draw 4% of that annually and live off of that for 25 years. And I think that's a good general rule of thumb and a benchmark, but I had a total net worth that gave me 25 years, but my life expectancy was more than 25 years when retiring at 42. So it didn't mean I could live a life of leisure, and certainly wasn't looking to live a life of leisure. So the way I sort of help my clients define enough is, yes, you have to understand like your annual expenses and think through how much you'll need over the course of the future. But back to my earlier part of the conversation is, how can you treat your work more like art? And I actually learned sort of that framing from Derek Sivers. He is a great author to check out his books, and he's more of a modern philosopher. And he has an excellent framework about when you're thinking about treating your business and building something as art, there's 2 layers to it. There's an idea, right? And he has a framework where a bad idea is worth like -1. A good idea is like $1, and it goes on and on to like a great idea. So that's one layer. You have to multiply your ideas by execution. And execution is the real key. That's the real sauce. So for instance, you could have a good idea and basic execution and develop a 6-figure a year business. A really powerful reframe for me, because that to me helps you to have more confidence in, well, what is enough, right? What gives me the confidence to step into something? Maybe I'm not in my early 20s to go do my own thing. And yeah, I have a nice net worth, but if I've got 30 working years left and then another 30 years of life after that, how do I take care of myself and step into something that I would feel excited about doing every day for the rest of my life? And that framework helped me to frame it up for myself and frame it up for others. The key is to execute on good enough ideas and then deliver excellent execution. And so when you go through the exercise of trying to map that out, then you can really start to get detailed about what excites you for the rest of your life. For some, it might be real estate. buying homes, flipping homes, or multi-unit rental properties. Others, it could be investing in markets, more active trading, digital assets. Somebody like me could be writing more content and coaching and advising others. Others, it could be consulting, it could be fractional work, a startup, a micro SaaS company, an AI native startup, whatever the case may be. There's no shortage of opportunities to pursue because there's no shortage of solutions and problems to fix. There are plenty of ideas, but it will be, what can you execute? And I like to start by asking my clients, what could you do for the next 3 years where you could put your head down and not think about anything else? And that's a great way of thinking through the execution layer, because that will ultimately determine, well, can you bring your idea to life and stick with it to see it come to fruition? And if you can fund yourself for at least those 3 years where you're not hurting, that's a good way to think about it. The 25-year rule, 4% drawdown, the good ideas and excellent execution. And a third way that I work with clients too is if you can replace at least 70% of your base salary doing your own thing, knowing that there will be tax efficiencies with being an entrepreneur, less commitments that's necessary, like no commuting and so forth. If you can replace at least 70% of your base salary, some say replace all of it, but I work with sellers mostly and high-end sellers who have a decent base income. If you can, again, focus on doing something that you're really passionate about, you're excited about, like you could build a business plan on your own time on a Saturday. If you can replace 70% of your base salary, I say that's good timing to step into it and just go for it.
Yeah, and I think you brought up like tax advantages, eliminating commute, eliminating the other things on your calendar and whatnot, but it's also just like the fulfillment piece of it. There's nothing like making something out of nothing with your name on it. You can point to that and say, I fucking did that. And the critical piece of that, right? Okay, there's no shortage of ideas. There's never been a shortage of ideas. There will never be a shortage of ideas because there will never be a shortage of problems, right? But that execution piece is absolutely everything, right? And the only way that you're going to be able to sustain the level of execution that's required for how long is required is if you genuinely care about the problem that you're solving and care about doing a good job, which is like caring about the problem that you're solving. That comes down to you just like internally having to do the work to find that, right? Like what are some elements of the job that you genuinely enjoy doing? How can you build a business where you'll be in a place where you can do more of that? Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows for a long time, right? Like even with the marketing agency that we built for 5 years, there were still elements of the job that I was doing that I really didn't like. There's always going to be that. Do you care about solving the problem that you're building this business to solve? And can you build it in a way where you can be in the spot where you're spending your time doing the work that you really enjoy, right? Which is how you approach building a team that's involved with you in that business, is like you optimize for the things that you genuinely enjoy or are good at. And then a lot of what you just brought up, kind of that inner work of finding and treating work like art, right? And Naval defines art as anything done for its own sake, right? Where you would just do it for the sake of doing it without even the expectation of a reward or anything. Reminds me of Shihil Bloom. Like one of the exercises that he assigns to you in the book, The 5 Types of Wealth, is finding your ikigai. So like when you pair the concept of ikigai with the concept of finding your definition of enough, those are like my 2 favorite exercises from that book. But your ikigai is your overlap between what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. And if you can find that where those circles overlap, then it's like that's your reason for being, right? Or your ikigai. So you pair that with then, okay, what's my definition of enough financially? Right, let's call it $500,000 a year. Okay, how can I find something that's aligned with my ikigai that can make me $500,000 a year? Right now you have a pretty good tactical roadmap, and the way that you kind of broke down the MAP framework definitely is a good example of what makes a good framework, is when everything kind of like folds back into each other. So I appreciate all the work that you've done to put that together. You're in the info product space, right? You have this coaching program where you teach others how to install this MAP roadmap into their life and kind of live by it and make progress. The big problem that I found with my business is that in the info product space, whether it's a book, course, coaching program, whatever, nobody gets value unless they actually do the work, right? Like I
Yeah.
have been guilty of this my whole life, honestly, where I've always been a
Yep.
voracious reader. I love books. I take notes,
Yep.
bend the page corners, underline, watch all the course videos, show up to all the coaching calls, whatever. But when it comes time to actually do the work, right? When I'm reading the book and it says, okay, now go do this exercise, I would always like be like,
Yep.
okay, yeah, that'd be great if I did it. And I just keep reading, right? So I would rarely
Yeah.
ever really do the work, take action on the things that I learned. So how have you
Yeah.
designed your coaching program to close what I call the client execution gap that bridges people
Yep.
from learning the content, learning the information to actually taking action and doing it?
It's a big problem and it's a big challenge to have to solve for, because you're right. Like, I see a lot of one funnel. A lot of people get excited about maybe stuff I write about on LinkedIn, right? And so they'll get in and they'll subscribe, right, for free. And then when they subscribe, they're getting, more detailed content and thoughts around how to operate and think about how they can architect autonomy. And then they'll maybe become a paid member. What I try to do once they become a paid member is, I love this concept of treating work as play. I hate overusing acronyms, but I am more of a design and systems thinker. And so I actually have definitions of work. You wrestle with the small things. You're overwhelmed by everything
Mm.
coming at you. You sort of react as a victim to everything. And then you eventually get knocked out by burnout. So that's how we define work inside our ecosystem. And the counter to that is play. You ponder the bigger picture. You leverage the right tools and resources. You act in the right way at the right time to yield outsized results. And so to make play come to life, we actually have things that pop up on your calendar. We literally try to transform your calendar into a game console. And so it can be notifications. I don't yet have an app, right, that does this notification for you, but we have an app-like experience where, the digital community tries to transform your calendar so that there are very specific things that keep you accountable without somebody being there. But we always have that accountability because others within the community can be your mentors and coaches or your support group.
Nice.
We actually have a 3-layer framework to that as well, right? So always we should be striving for people who are a few years ahead of you. Those should be your coaches and mentors. Those who are equal to you, that's where you should be sharing ideas, best practices, encouraging one another, supporting one another. And then the layer below, you should be giving back to those, because when you teach something, obviously you become better at what you're teaching. The student starts to become the teacher for you. And so if you keep those 3 layers in play, it's hard not to succeed. To simplify it, we gamify the calendar so that things are showing up at the right time to make it easier to achieve it, right? Make hard things easier, right? We're always trying to do that. We have this 3-layer framework in place so that you always have the right support or mentoring or teaching opportunity. And then there's always live events, strategy sessions, one-on-one coaching to bring it all into place. So that's kind of how we're tackling it at the moment. And we're looking to improve that all the time. Like, I have an AI clone that I want at any time somebody could interact with, and it's all trained on the philosophy and the frameworks so that anytime you get stuck, they're literally there to help you to kind of work through it. More and more of that evolving over time to improve the experience.
Amazing. I think you're the first person that I've talked to who has that kind of internal system where the participants within the program act as mentors and coaches to the other people in the program. I think that's genius. Like, accountability is a big word that's thrown around within the info product space about how you get the people to do the work you assign to them. But usually it's coaches to consumer or coaches to client accountability, but having the clients coach each other, I think, is genius. And it also helps them learn everything so much more because they have to then teach it, which is 100% a fact. You learn so much by teaching. I've learned that in my own experience a ton. But The last point that you
Yeah.
brought up there is actually my main focus with info products creators is kind of creating that AI clone for them. There's no way that the human element of the info product space and the coaching programs, et cetera, ever goes away. Like that wrap of
Yeah.
accountability, the human to human interaction, the relationship with the coach, like that is so critical to everything. But there's an element where you can use AI to help smooth out the resistance that comes from doing the work. Like let's say you have that
Yeah.
task where you help them kind of set their mission, vision, and values, or like
Yeah.
these different moments within the program where you have them do some work. If you can build an AI clone of sorts or a custom model that's trained on your unique expertise that guides them through doing that work step by step. That's the way that I've approached kind of smoothing out some
Yeah.
of that resistance. There's just one element to that closing the client
Yeah.
execution gap.
And that's how I
Um,
think in this AI enabled economy, like that's how you create your moats, right? That's how you can
yeah,
truly use AI. I think the AI slop that so many people complain about, yeah, the barrier to entry, it's so easy to just copy others. Like I could steal from Sahil Bloom, but I'm not Sahil Bloom. So me just
yeah,
trying to regurgitate the 5 types of wealth would serve me nothing.
yeah,
But if I can actually put out original content based off of my real stories and my battle scars, very easy to train AI around that, right? An actual
yes,
approach. And that's what people are craving. They're craving the human side. It's not to say you can't use AI to create content, but it should still be steeped in your own human experience. And then when you can do that, that's how you start to create a moat and start to really be an outlier in a good way in this
mm-hmm.
AI powered economy that we're in the midst of.
100%. This is why I love these conversations because I think like great ideas come from a few places, one of them being engaged in thoughtful conversation. And I think the way that
Yeah.
using AI on the content creation side, I don't think is I just don't like it. Like I just don't like it has
Yeah.
to be human. It has to come from your own experience. Like maybe you can use AI to help you kind of chew through and chew on the ideas for sure. But
That's right. Yeah.
you create the content and then you can train your own custom AI on the content that you've now created to then
Yeah.
allow others to engage with it, right? And I think the magic of these things is that
Yeah.
you can package your expertise into these scalable AI systems, which is you talked about using AI to kind of go from 1 to 3 to
Yeah.
like 1 to 10 or like 10xing, 100xing your
Yeah. Yeah.
scalability and your leverage. So if you had a giant billboard that everyone in the world could see for 10 seconds, what would it say and why?
Salespeople are in the best role to create autonomy, but there's a right way to create it and a wrong way.
Amazing. Brandon, thank you so much for your time.
Ian, this is awesome. Thanks.
And that does it for my conversation with Brandon Fluharty. Here are my 3 main takeaways from the conversation. Number 1, autonomy is built on purpose. Brandon's point was simple. If you do not intentionally design for autonomy, success and continued growth can actually trap you through promotions, obligations, and lifestyle inflation. Number 2, your calendar is your autonomy scoreboard. The MAP framework gives you a really practical lens. As you move from learn to earn to evolve, you should be gaining calendar ownership, financial runway, and optionality, not just a higher title. Number 3, execution is the multiplier and it has to be designed. Brandon does not just teach ideas, he builds systems that helps people follow through, like community layers for mentoring and accountability within his programs, calendar-based prompts, and even the idea of an AI clone to reduce friction and keep people moving forward within his coaching program. If you want to get connected with Brandon, he's one of the best follows on LinkedIn. You can search him, Brandon Fluharty, on LinkedIn or use the link in the description. If you're an author, course creator, consultant, or coach and want to close the client execution gap in order to increase your impact and client retention, download the free Program Execution Engine Toolkit at the link in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.